Welcome back, my friends. It's great to see you. Looney is he's in his new catio that I built. I'll show it to you, and but not today. The topic this week is the irritating, uh, peculiar topic of change, and you hear a lot of people say, "Boy, I really don't like change." And as I said yesterday, I always want everything to get better and better and better. I just don't want anything to change, which is um, silly and ridiculous because the concept of better always involves the reality of change. And so, uh, how do we shift our own personal attitude and ideas about change? And I've always thought that the metaphor of a kaleidoscope is an interesting one. We might spell kaleidoscope Collide, collide, kaleidoscope. We're always colliding with change, and the change that always seems to be uh, im- impinged or forced upon us. And can't we just get life in one particular way? Can't we just shape and mold life to exactly the way we want it, and then it's done? It's like a cake that's been baked, it's perfect, it's frosted, it's got all the little characters on it, it's all just perfect, just like that. And that seems to be a decidedly mortal way of thinking about it, or maybe it's a decidedly Greg way of thinking about it with my small-mindedness. If I could just get my picture just right, and then everybody else just leave it alone. And then all will be well. And actually, the world would be way better off if I could arrange and change everything just the way that I like it. But we, of course, know that that's nuts. So, what is it about change? And so, change is God's greatest gift to us. Isn't that an unusual way of thinking about change? Because if something doesn't change, it's stagnant, it's stagnation, and stagnation is death. Stagnation is death. When we think about a little marsh, uh, an inland marsh near an ocean, when the tide comes in and goes out, that little marsh stays fresh and clean, and that's where all the birds like to hang out, and the wildlife and the reeds and rushes. It's so alive. But when the inland marsh is cut off from the tide coming in and out, the daily change, the daily refreshing, the marsh goes stagnant. The insects, the water goes brackish, and everything dies and it stinks. And that's what would happen to us if we could freeze reality into a particular state that we like. And so consciousness is way smarter than that. And that's why everything is always changing. The kaleidoscope is always turning. But why then would we be afraid of change? Well, we really haven't learned to the degree that we can to work with it. Now, I'm going to suggest something very bold and dynamic, and that is consciousness is always in control of change when it is. In other words, we are designed as spiritual beings to have something called dominion over the world. And by the world, I mean the manifest material world that we live in. We are designed as spiritual beings to have sovereign dominion over the world that we look at, except that we're in spiritual kindergarten, and it seems like the world is always changing us. It's always affecting us from the outside in. And this is because we are materially minded beings, and we haven't really gained our spiritual dominion. In our meditation, we keep establishing this immovable, unobstructable, inviolable, unchangeable inner world. That's the part of us that we can find that never changes, and that's our consciousness, our pure, perfect, pristine, holy, sacred, reverent internal world. As we find that, we begin to influence all the change that we see. And when we get to that point, we don't have to control or manage or manipulate. Our simple connection with soul and spirit influences the kaleidoscope that we look at. And then every time the kaleidoscope turns, we can say the great prayer, I see the direct action of God in every change. And while change may seem scary or terrifying or what's going to happen, this internal faith begins to take hold that says, I see the direct action of God. And then every change is for the better. Every change makes us larger, grander, more loving, more whole. And I know each and every one of you is feeling that in your life. And as we become less and less scared of change, and we realize change is God's greatest gift to bring us to Him or to her, as the case might be, we can see the direct action of God in every change. So bless the change that you're going through. I'm blessing mine. I'm going through level 11 change in my life right now, and I'm terrified and loving it and delighted and just exhilarated all at the same time. Anyway, love your change, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.